Hi, I'm Christine. Thanks for being here. In our video today, we are talking about true autumn, mostly neutrals, but we're going to look at some colors as well. I've been so thankful and impressed with how specific the questions that you're asking in the YouTube comments or sending me by email have been. I really understand how knowing your season and having your color palette is an amazing filter for this huge world of beauty advice. And all of a sudden, you know what's about you and you know what to ignore, but you're still stepping into a very big world of information and ideas, world of cosmetics and hair color and clothing, and you feel like you have an awful lot of jobs to do at once and you're not sure where to get started. I understand that really well, and that's what I would like to help you with. Let's go ahead and get started. Our first image is True Autumn Whites. Question was, how do I recognize True Autumn White and distinguish it from Spring Ivory? You see the vertical line, colors on the left, where most of the items are. To me, they look like reasonable contenders for True Autumn White. On the right side of the line, they didn't look quite right, and we'll talk about why. So back on the left side of the line, where most of the items are, those earrings in the second row look to me like a pretty good average example of True Autumn White, the way it would appear in a swatch or paint, let's say. And I put those there for a couple of reasons. One is that when you look at the clothing, you might think, wow, this is a lot darker or more pigmented than I thought it would be. But when you actually look at a big area of True Autumn White, their lightest white, it does look white, or at least very light beige, and similar to the earrings. The earrings are also the lightest of the whites on this side, and the reflected light is lighter, and yet I still think it's good for True Autumn. Like, compare them with the t-shirt, top of the vertical row to the right of the line. If I asked which is more beige or gold and which one is more peach or yellow, you might say the earrings are beige and the top is peach, relatively. And then on the same side as the t-shirt, the blouse below was even lighter, and it has that same peach tone. I would see that for spring. Gold is autumn's warmth, yellow is spring's warmth, and sometimes with white, it's almost more visible because there's not a lot of other pigment to conceal or mask them. You can see the yellow coming out, and you can get the sense of the beige or gold coming out. What would we say about the other autumn whites? There's quite a lot of pigment. Compared with the third item to the right of the line, it's not necessarily too light, but it's somehow too soft. It's too lightweight. It's kind of floaty. Not saying it's not True Autumn White, just saying it's an item I would want to see in person before deciding. I would have to take my palette and lay it right on the fabric. Your color palette, that fan, I mean, that's your face, right? If you blur out all the shapes and just look at the colors all together, because that's what everybody sees when they look at you, all the colors all together, lay it on that blouse, well, that's what you look like wearing the blouse. Very good objective way of seeing how you look in clothing. And despite being light colors, there's a darkness in the autumn colors compared with the items on the right side of the line. Item at the bottom of the vertical row to the right of the line. Now we're getting closer to white. I would think about that for dark autumn. The muting, gray, a little bit of gray coming out, and the darkness, that looks really good for autumn. They work very well with that. And the warmth that's there, less of it than in the other items, and it's more gold than peach. I don't see yellow or peach coming out of this item, but the color is getting closer to white, meaning that winter is coming into the mixture. It's not white enough to be winter, but you can see it's whiter than all of the other true items on the page. Next image, we're looking at beige and gray. So we've just taken our neutrals and gone a little bit darker. Light to medium neutrals for autumn, other than white, was the question. So we're moving through a light to dark range from the top to the bottom. Once again, we have the vertical line with items that I didn't feel worked very well on the right side. In each of our panels, we'll see a lot of similar neutrals, and you may or may not find them exactly in your color palette. There's a lot of ways to be right about color palettes. And as long as the choices are harmonious with the season's color dimensions, I think it can work quite well, particularly for softer seasons meeting lower saturation colors like True Autumn, because there are lots of steps in between colors. If you imagine all the clothes in this panel, in the picture that you're looking at, picture them as pixels on a page. I mean, it could be 10,000 pixels, it could be a 10,000 piece puzzle of beiges, but they'd all be perfectly fine. None of them would stick out as, wow, that doesn't belong here. Your palette, is just a menu that a designer curated from thousands of colors to give you a guide to show you how to get started to find all those others that could work. Same way we saw with the whites. Some colors are more yellow or golden, some are more beige, and then some have more visible red tones. 2 beige sweaters in the center row, and then the golden turtleneck in the bottom row. Now they could be in different strips of your color palette, could be in with the brown neutrals, some could be in with the yellows. Just another decision a color designer makes when they put together these. But to me, they're all perfectly acceptable as neutrals. I'm sure that there are conventional ideas about what makes a neutral, but I think a neutral is whatever I say it is. So if it goes with everything, like camel for autumn, for example, then I think it qualifies. Same with the khaki greens at the end of each row and in the center of the bottom row. They could be in different strips on your palette. Some could be with khakis, neutrals, some could be with greens, but I think they're all compatible neutrals with the colors in this group. On the right side of the vertical line, top item, it doesn't have the muting or the darkness to fit with True Autumn colors. Like if you moved it over to the True Autumn side, it looked like it was floating, or it would be hard to make out on the page. And same effect when True Autumn people wear colors that are for other seasons, the edge of the face becomes hard to make out. It makes the face look flatter and wider just by the effect of reflected light and darkness on shape. And then on the True Autumn side, we get no trouble seeing the outline of the shapes, which is so flattering for the facial silhouette of True Autumn people. Still on the right side of the line, second item down, the green, well, that does have some golden warmth, and it does look soft rather than bright. The outline is easier to make out than for the item above, I think. But I'm not sure we're meeting the darkness range. I still find that item, if you moved it over with the True Autumn items, it would look further away or grayer than it is somehow. I like the items on the left of the line better. The third items in the first and second row, better examples to me of True Autumn khaki. Item below that, the brown short sleeve sweater, is a great autumn color, but now I think it's gone the other way and it has too much pigment for True Autumn. Might belong better in dark autumn if you slid it into the other side with all those other tops or blouses, it would stand out a little bit. Third image, neutral outfits. The question was, how do I make outfits with light neutral colors for True Autumn? So now we have a sense of, well, what colors qualify as light neutrals for True Autumn? So let's look at some outfits. Variety of looks. No color really goes beyond medium dark. In overall or average darkness, a True Autumn person, and therefore the clothes they wear, medium to medium dark group. I don't adhere too tightly to formulas for getting dressed. I think depending on the time of year, where you live, the occasion, what everyone around us is wearing, different combinations can look fine. And here, I've sprinkled in a few items of color or darkness or shine or texture, which I get is a departure from the question or the request, but I pictured the page without them, or I made the page without them, and it just looked a little bland. It didn't quite solidify. So that could have a lot to do with me. Whether you add those items or not, well, those are decisions that everyone makes for themselves. I thought they added movement. Whether contrast of darkness or contrast of texture, color, something interesting happened, and the outfit becomes more complete, more grounded, more organized. If you compare those looks with the two outfits in the center of the lower row, fine for true autumn, but true autumn people naturally have more color variety in how they look. And I think appearance just works when repeat what you are in colors, repeat what you are in shape, and what you wear makes sense for you. And so here, it's not that the colors are wrong, but I find that the look in its entirety somehow might be an example of under-glamorizing oneself. And hey, if it's a cottage barbecue or a day at the beach, it makes sense to me. Gray pants, top row. Now, gray is a challenging color for true autumn, or challenging to me in terms of being able to recognize it just by looking. I would need to have the item in front of me. So they passed one of my tests, which is, do they blend into this picture and hold their own, or do they fade or disappear or clash? I think they blend in. They work just fine. We have an orange item in the top row and a gold item in the bottom row. Coming back to my definition of neutrals is flexible. Color that you can wear with any color in the palette in any size area, and it doesn't contribute an obvious color block. But both colors, they seem such an extension of the person. You know, sometimes you'll see people wear sunglasses that have a frame in similar color to their hair, or certain body colors can be repeated and worn as neutrals, and I'm a real fan of that. I think it looks terrific. Coming over to the right side of the vertical line, pants at the top, could be an example of a true spring medium dark to dark brown. Now, true spring's not going to get a lot darker than this, but there's more pigment than in the true autumn browns, was what I wanted to point out. Color might be called bright rather than muted, even though it is brown, just means how much pigment. Pants below, similar to the color just to the left with the gold top, but they're also brighter, more pigment, and I think they exceed true autumn, but they probably belong with dark autumn. Maybe dark autumn colors rather than neutrals. So you'll find neutrals mixed in with the neutral strips. You'll find them with the color strips sometimes. And so this could be an example of a dark autumn green, could go with anything. You'd probably find it in the color strips. We're on to brown now. You'd think that there'd be so much brown for autumn, for true autumn, but like white, navy, blue, some are better backgrounds for the brighter colors, some are better neutrals, that's what a neutral is, than others. The question was, how do I add interest, texture, or contrast to brown? Left of the vertical line, those are the ones that I think of as great browns for true autumn. Camel coat, top left, that'd be about my idea of true autumn camel. And then another version in the knee-length coat to the right of the vertical line. Yellower and beige, more beige options might appear in different strips of the palette. I think they'd both be great. Depends on how neutral of an effect you want. The knee-length coat could say that's more neutral, and that color also, I think, could be perfectly fine for soft autumn. Comparing with the two coats at the top on the right of the line, well, I think they're in the I need to see them category. The one on the left, that could be a light beige for true autumn. The one on the right looks too gray for true autumn or soft autumn. It has a grayish look and actually more red pigment, maybe a good choice for dark autumn. Back on the true autumn side, dark brown coat at the top, kind of a burgundy brown. You might find it with the red swatches. And I liked it because it's a different textile than the other coats. So much of what we see for autumn is wool, and everyone needs warm weather textiles, but everybody needs waterproof clothing as well, at least if you live where I do. Bottom side, on the true autumn side, two coats that have a pattern or a print. I think that adds a lot of interest. The coat is the same brown as the pants, which gives a nice monochromatic effect with light to dark movement and texture variations. Dark brown pant in the center, same color as the plaid in the coat, and that's also about as brown as dark as true autumn brown would go. And then the item under the knee-length coat, interesting blend of the various colors of the other coats, getting a little brighter for true autumn, but I think still terrific for that season. They can wear a lot of pigment and looks really good. Back over on the right of the vertical line, Two dark coats in the middle row. The one with the golden buttons, it's too pigmented. You can compare it with the red, brown, burgundy coat top of True Autumn. You just see that the similarity in the color, but the difference in the brightness. And then the dark coat is darker than the pants, where we said that's about as dark as True Autumn Brown's going to go. With the plaid coat, you make color darker by adding blue and black, and neither of which I think would be terrific for True Autumn. In fact, I think that coat would look darker than it is. And then the two items below that, the coat with the wide lapels. I don't know what my problem was or what it is I wanted to point out with that one. Looks fine to me as a variation on True Autumn Brown or Camel. Coat in the lower right corner, it looks like Dark Autumn. It's more spicy. It is brighter, more saturated, just a little more fired up feeling than you get from the True Autumn colors. If it were a flavor, it would be stronger. It would have a little more bite. See how I got the microphone on my necklace? It's called Making It Work. We're on to pink. I wanted to include pink because it wasn't a question from a viewer. It is the one color in the palette, I think, that doesn't look like traditional pink. So we've seen this in all our videos where there will be a color that does not look for that season like your traditional idea of the color. Pink for True Autumn looks terracotta or coral, kind of how soft red looks when you add golden warmth to it. Three items in the top, the shoes, the shorts, the coat, could belong in the neutral tones of your palette, or maybe with the reds. In the neutral tones, the color could be described as soft salmon, compared with the shoe at the top of the row on the far right, which is soft pink. It just doesn't look warm enough or pigmented enough for True Autumn. It's got the right idea, it just doesn't have enough pigment to hold its own with the colors. The coat in between, I mean, that is just really superb. It's almost keeping me up at night. And the shorts are great, light, soft, terracotta pink. Items in the middle row seem like good contenders for True Autumn pink, brighter terracotta in the racerback top. That would cross over to soft autumn too, I think. Be nice if it were a little more pigmented for True Autumn. Next one down, darker version of that color. To the right of the racerback tank top is a coral color. It could work here. It may be bright. Maybe it looks bright because it's surrounded by more neutral tones, where if it were surrounded by True Autumn colors, probably it would look fine. And it might also cross over nicely into spring. There are certain colors that could be shared between the two seasons because they have this shared warmth. People don't drape the same way. People drape very differently, meaning how they look when they wear the colors. But there could be the odd color could be shared between the two. And then below the t-shirt is a lacy, soft coral top, which if I owned that, I would take out the tank top underneath and I would replace it with a richer, warmer white. The items on the right-hand side of the line, similar versions in the True Autumn palette, I just couldn't make them work with True Autumn colors. So the sandal, we said, is not bright enough, not enough pigment. It has an earthy quality, but it is too muted, too gray, maybe too light. The bag below, same thing. It's not earthy. It's not dark enough. It's not muted enough to go with the rest of the items. Just try moving it over to the other side of the line, and what would you wear it with? Tank top below that. Now that's a good example of spring. You can see the yellow coming out of that. It's peach. The effect isn't really muted salmon or terracotta or spicy or soft. It's yellow and peach. Below the tank top, the wallet maybe could go on either side. I still sense a fair bit of yellow coming out of that. It has more of a slightly candy quality maybe than the items on the True Autumn side. But if it were put together with them in an outfit, it might be a little bit brighter, but it's an accessory. You don't wear it near the face, and it could be at least understandable. The top at the bottom, also coral. Could see it work for spring or autumn. Could imagine outfits with many of the True Autumn neutrals, maybe less well with the colors. Doesn't seem to have the muting or the darkness. You can sense lightness or sunshine coming from it. Maybe I could see it better for spring, but it might be one that could find situations where it would work. The next panel is about dark copper. The reader's question was that there's a version of this dark orange color in True Autumn, Dark Autumn, and Bright Spring. How do I tell them apart? What is it that makes them different? And so we could call this a variation on dark orange, let's say. We'll see more traditional orange in our next panel. In all three lineups, you can see yellower and redder versions of this color, same way that they're found in the color palettes for the seasons. You may see yellower or redder versions in your palette, or if you own several, you'll see different ones. Within a season palette, the brightness, meaning the pigment concentration, is about the same, and that's a big way of how you're going to find whether these colors belong and whether all the colors belong. We put so much emphasis on warm and cool, but those mean less, or they're harder to gauge because they are so relative to whatever's beside them. Whereas light to dark and brightness, if someone were to say on a scale of 1 to 10, how light or dark is this? Or how close to gray or pure pigment is this? You might guesstimate it pretty accurately, and so brightness is really useful, and that's how we're going to tell these apart. I like brightness because it always means the same thing. Warm and cool, well, they have different behaviors depending on the color chemistry. Warm blue is this way and cool green is that way, or it can be the other way. I cannot keep that straight. And brightness, it just means how much pigment. The other thing I like about brightness is that when two colors have about the same darkness level, it becomes even easier to gauge their brightness accurately. So here in the True Autumn group, brightness is about right, and overall medium bright may look softer than it is because of the two groups that are next to it. And you'd probably call it soft more than you'd call it bright. These are relatively soft seasons. And also, these are all mattifying textiles, meaning they soften color except for the wallet at the bottom. Dark Autumn group, pigmentation's getting higher, and you can start seeing some bright rust tones. There are redder and bluer versions here. A couple of items on the True Autumn, Dark Autumn border. They could work just fine for both. Rust is such a hallmark autumn color. And having a level of darkness that Dark Autumn likes, also inherently easy for autumn. Once we get to Bright Spring, the pigment concentration goes up another step. Colors might be considered orange, but they're not soft and they're not muted. I think of them as intense dark carrot. I also have intense butterscotch and I have varnished guitar. It's where I see these colors. On the Dark Autumn to Bright Spring border, the bag at the top, quite similar to the yellow version of intense butterscotch that you'll see in the yellow strip of Bright Spring palettes, the darkest yellow. Brown leather purse, it's always going to give an autumn impression, but the pigmentation's high. You see it's warm, light, and bright, and relative to items over in True Autumn, there might be enough common ground to make outfits with Bright Spring. Interesting compositions, at least, and I think that's excellent. It's original, and it gives that question in the viewer's mind. It becomes provocative, like, why does that work when you wouldn't think that it would? Might not be perfect with every Bright Spring color, but certainly compatible. Still in Bright Spring, the top with the blue diamond print. Redder version of this color. Dark Autumn or Bright Spring might wear the rust, but only a Bright Spring is going to make sense of that blue, and that's reasonable. Dark Autumn and Bright Spring, they're both warm, neutral types of coloring or groups of color. They have similar light to dark ranges, but the brightness quality is going to make the difference. That top is also at the darkness limit for Bright Spring, whereas Dark Autumn gets a fair bit darker than this, True Autumn as well. The shirt on the Dark Autumn, Bright Spring border, similar to the yellow version of this color in Bright Spring, meaning the bag up above on the border, but it's darker and redder, and I might see it better for Dark Autumn. But if the Bright Spring had these colors in the hair or the eyes, it might connect better with the person. Once they share 80 or 85% of what they are, colors find ways to work. Maybe not in cosmetics, that's a much more specific application, but in apparel and accessories especially, or apparel worn further from the face, they do find ways of making it work. So now we're on to gold, another one of those fundamental colors for true autumn, the way yellow is for spring, because these are the colors that provide the warmth for these warm seasons and also for their neutral seasons. Like any other color, gold has all kinds of variations, and like any other material, it has different kinds of reflectivity, some of which I think harmonize better with the palette than others. Because autumn is soft and muted, I think those effects look great when you apply them to metals. Personal taste, but I sometimes find gold that is super yellow and super shiny. You know, you think, well, autumn can wear gold. Yes, but there are certain golds that to me look better than others. Some are better for spring. If the jewelry outshines the person or is too pigmented for the person, then the presentation seems to circle around the jewelry rather than the person wearing it. So if we look at this image, top left, the two hoop earrings seem like good versions of gold. Neither one is quite as yellow or as shiny as the little circular earrings to the left of the line. They could be okay, but I like the hoops better. And then the lower pair of hoops is even more muted. Remember we saw with the coats how you can have yellower camel or more neutral camel? Well, this is kind of the same thing, where you have more muted, more neutral, sort of how camel might appear in metal in the lower hoops. Next one's down, earrings on the left of the line could be okay because it's a red gold. It's not a super yellow gold, but we'd want to try them with the palette. And this is the same as anything else. Open your palette and put the jewelry right on there and look at what happens. If the jewelry outshines the palette, meaning you're looking at the metal and you can't see the colors at all, then it will be too something, and a quieter metal, a softer metal might be a better idea. The link necklace to the right of the line seemed a little more comfortable to me. Would you agree? Maybe because it's darker, it's not as shiny. It has a brassy quality that reminds me of the green tone that you find in many neutrals. In the next ones down, we're looking at orange. Left of the line, the clear orange, it looks like a spring variation. From the brightness of the color and also the light shiny gold, there's no rule that says that every color in printed fabric all has to be within the harmony of a season. Well, the same is true with colored items in jewelry and metals. Sometimes they look impossible together. The three items to the right of the line, they look good to me. The bracelet looks about how true autumn orange would look, or one of the many. This is a warm season. They're going to have a lot of orange. The earrings with the star outline, similar version of orange, darker color, and the metal is also darker and richer than the more spring-looking pair on the left of the line. Then below that, another choice of orange or red orange with a better gold for true autumn. Different styles, maybe for different people, but all good choices for true autumn. Now we're on the right-hand side. From the top, variations of greener and redder in metals, same as we saw in fabrics. These are darker and they're not as pigmented relative to those super shiny yellow items on the far side. The ring could belong with the green gold strip in the palette. The cuff is like dark camel, similar idea to the hoop earrings, a bit more neutral effect done in metal. Below that, dark gold again, combined with darker stones. And then the two necklaces with ambers and browns, natural materials. I think it looks really good on autumns, and it pairs very well. That effect pairs really well with metals. I like the rose. It's a softer metal. It's a darker, richer color. Let your eye drift back over to the two autumns on the top over on the left. And you can see the difference on the left side of the line. And then the rose, you see how different they are? This three-dimensional effect is superb for autumn. And it looks great in their colors, and it looks great on those people because autumn light creates three-dimensional shapes, same way as giving the facial silhouette a contour and makeup. Looks fantastic for true autumn people. You could compare the rose to the two watches at the bottom in the right-hand corner. I prefer the watch on the right. It has more continuity with the rose than the bright yellow watch, that super shiny watch. It's almost hard to make out exactly what the shapes are, and it'd be hard to picture it in an outfit with any of the items we saw. It'd be the only thing you could see. And so to me, it probably belongs on the right of the line, but I put it here so you could see it next to the other watch by comparison. And then the watch in the lower right's kind of a blend of rich gold or beige gold. If you're into $17,000 watches, I could be if I didn't have so many anyway. Nice use of diamonds too around the face of the watch. Doesn't overly cool the effect, but it heightens the sense of luxury without being cooling to the skin. I hope that you found some answers to your questions, that you understand true autumn neutrals and colors and how to choose colors for your season better. Sometimes when we get some answers, it opens up a whole new round of questions. And so please share those with us so that we can keep learning together. Thank you so much for being here. I will look forward to seeing you in our next video.